What's going on, everyone? MikeO back with another episode of Hobby Talk. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen to the show. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by my buddy Joe, who is better known in social media on YouTube as Silver Jackify. Joe, welcome to the show.
What's up? Thanks for having me up, Mike. I'm pretty excited to be on the podcast finally.
We've definitely been working on it for a little while. I'm definitely happy to have you. There's a ton to talk to. The timing is great, though, as Major League Baseball season has officially begun. They began overseas with the Mariners and Athletics, but opening day for everyone else, including your Yankees and my Phillies, starts next week. So that's definitely an exciting part of the year, something to look forward to this spring into the summer and hopefully October as well. And that just means that we're in the peak of the hobby, the sports card season, if you're into just following stuff, because with watching baseball comes the thought process of purchasing and viewing and enjoying your collection of baseball cards. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit tonight.
How you feeling about your Phillies this year?
I'm certainly excited. It was a long and grueling off season. I mean, it was exciting because they made a ton of additions, but it seemed to take forever. Everything took a while to develop, and it's been a while for the Phils. They've had some lean years. They built up a little bit. They had a strong start to last year, but they really went haywire this offseason. So it brings a lot of expectations, and it's exciting. But of course, it's a good division. There's a lot of good teams, so we'll see. I'm trying to keep the expectations, not trying to get them out of control. I can't say the same for the rest of Philadelphia, though. People are going pretty crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember I did a video about 2 years ago predicting the New York Yankees in 2019. I actually did the entire starting lineup. I don't know if you ever saw it, Mike, but I did. I had Bryce Harper playing, I think, left field for the Yankees. So turns out, I guess I was wrong about that one. The Phillies got him, but the Yankees, they become a different team over the, since the George Steinbrenner years. It's under Hal and Hank. It's been a very, very different team that's a little bit more careful about how they spend their money. Probably because they've been burned so many times. You still got Jacoby Ellsbury right now is, I think, the highest paid player on the Yankees right now, and he hasn't played in like 2 years. So
that's the risk of the big contracts. And hey, the big money teams can afford to absorb some of those risks. The Yankees aren't going to get crushed because they give out a bad contract or two. But if it starts to get out of hand, that's where it can hurt a team, even as big as the Yankees, and it can cripple a smaller market team. The Phillies, speaking on their about them for a moment, like they had a high payroll there for a while in their heyday with the whole 08 team and kind of the team that developed after that. But obviously, eventually, they did have a few contracts that became bad, and then they had to rebuild. So they really haven't spent a lot in the last few years, and they got a new TV contract, so they've had a ton of money to spend. I mean, there's a reason they gave Carlos Santana $60 million last year. They had no competition. They gave him $60 million, I think, just to spend money, just to not look like cheapskates. But they got out of that. So it's going to be exciting with Harper, and I'm sure as a Yankees fan, you're thrilled and excited for another season, the quest to continue to bring another championship back there. That seems to be the expectation kind of year after year, at least for the last 2 decades or so. Obviously, they had some troubled times there in the 80s, but Yankees have been pretty good for a while now.
Yeah. I mean, they've had kind of at the beginning of this spring training, they've had a lot of injuries, which is never an ominous sign, I guess you could say. So I'm hoping, even Greg Bird just got hit by a pitch. He went in for X-rays the other day, and then even the Lee Mazzilli came in as a guest instructor and got hit by a pitch. So it's been kind of an ominous way to start the year, but I think they've got their team is so deep with talent, and that is the nice thing about when you have deep pockets, you have guys that are riding the bench that would start for almost any team. So the Yankees are pretty fortunate that, they could just take a guy like LeMahieu, who's been almost a career 300 hitter in Coors Field, and just pull him right off the bench and have him start if you need to. So, and then they just signed Gio Gonzalez, because Luis Severino went down. So they have a lot of resources, but it's never a good sign. That's always, as you know, it's all about staying healthy in baseball, and it's very hard to win if your players aren't healthy. And you saw that last year with Aaron Judge. I mean, he was on he looked like he could have been an MVP, and then all of a sudden he gets hurt. He was out for 6 to 8 weeks, and they really, really missed him while he was out. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's the thing. No matter how good the team looks on paper, you got to go out there and play. And it's a long season, and it's really difficult for a team to win the World Series. You think how long that regular season is just to stay healthy, just to get yourself into a position to play maybe a wild card playoff game or a best of 5 series. I mean, it's tough to get through those. And both the AL East and NL East, in my mind, are the 2 best divisions. I mean, they're just stacked. I mean, obviously, you have the Red Sox, who had that unbelievable year last year. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't your favorite season of all time watching them, but I mean, you got to give them credit. The regular season, yes, they rolled right through the playoffs. I mean, I think most people don't even realize the Tampa Bay Rays won 90 games last year. That's pretty freaking impressive. And then the NL East, the Nationals really don't have a weakness. They're a really good team. I mean, it's unbelievable. They could lose a player the caliber of Bryce Harper, and honestly, their team's still loaded. The Mets made some improvements. The Braves are still loaded and young, and then both of our favorite teams' divisions kind of have that one cellar dweller that's among the worst in baseball, with the Orioles and the Marlins, who are just you just shake your head and go, "What happened?"
Yeah, watch out for the Mets. I know a lot of people in the local area are hopeful, because the Mets, with that pitching staff, if that pitching staff can stay healthy, they could be a really good team, and they have some younger guys that are starting to, come together. So that's another team to watch out for in the NL East.
Yeah, I think the Mets, their key is certainly that pitching staff. I mean, they have the type of pitching staff that can pitch them to the World Series like they did a few years ago. Yeah. But, if there's a lot of issues there, it might be tough to overcome. But we'll see. Baseball season is here. I'm thrilled. Joe, I'm sure you're thrilled. And with that, let's get into the hobby a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about collecting sports cards, specifically baseball cards. And why don't you give those out there listening just a little bit of information about how you got into this hobby and found your way into continuing to collect cards, not just as a kid, but now as adult. And once you're an adult, you're collecting even a little more seriously, of course.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have a couple people to blame for why I got into collecting. The first person I would blame is my dad. So my dad, he grew up in Queens in the 1950s, and it's funny because he grew up in Queens, and you have the Giants, the Yankees, and the Dodgers all playing every year for a World Series. And for whatever reason, he decided he was going to be an Indians fan. And so he and I don't know why he was an Indians fan, but I always think about him, like I guess him and his uncle Tony Gagliano would sit by the radio and listen to baseball games, and he even remembers collecting the 1952 top set as a kid. It's like that same old story. He would collect the 52 tops. He'd throw them against the wall, put them in bicycle spokes, and then of course his grandma threw away his entire collection. When I was probably around 7 or 8 years old, he took me to an Indians game. It just so happened to be at Yankee Stadium, and in that game, I remember it was sometime in 1985 during Don Mattingly's MVP season, because I remember Don Mattingly hitting 2 home runs in that game, and immediately becoming a huge Don Mattingly fan, and then because of that, becoming a huge Yankees fan. And I remember, like, after the season was over, I really wanted to somehow have a piece in baseball. Like, I wanted it to keep going, but of course, the season was over and it was winter time. And the second person I blamed was I remember going over to my neighbor's house, and I was a Nintendo guy and he was a Sega guy. So he'd come over to my house to play Nintendo, and I'd go over there to play Sega. And I remember him breaking out his baseball card collection, and he went through all of his cards. And I remember, telling him how big of a fan I was of Don Mattingly. And so I remember him pulling out, he had the 1984 Topps Don Mattingly. And I remember just this wave of jealousy kind of like running, coursing through me. And I was like, I need to own that baseball card. And I don't know if you remember, late 80s, collecting, the only way things have changed so much, since we were kids. And, back in the day, you couldn't just go on eBay and, find the card that you're looking for, or, it was a lot more difficult. So the only way to find, a card like that would be to go to a baseball card store. And I remember, I don't remember how much it was, but I remember it was way over, like, it was like $30, which for, someone my age, when you're an 8 or 9 year old, that's like a fortune. But I remember getting, my parents ended up on Christmas Day getting me the 1984 Topps set, which of course included the Don Mattingly rookie card. And that sort of hooked me. And then sort of the final thing that kind of, the final thing that really, really hooked me into baseball card collecting was the Beckett. It's kind of the final thing that I blame, because I was sort of into, I had to get the Mattingly card, and I was collecting here and there. But I had the ability to kind of look at in a Beckett and be able to, look up, okay, my card is going up, my card is going down, and I can, I felt like I was, following stocks or following statistics. That's what I loved about baseball is, following a baseball player, seeing how his batting average went up or down, and where he led in the league. And now these were cards that I actually owned, and I could watch the cards. And I don't know about you, Mike, but like back then, I thought these cards were going to put me through college and be part of my retirement. So obviously things have changed, but especially for 80s cards. But that's sort of my story. That's how I got into collecting. So.
Yeah, there was certainly a downfall in the value of the majority of those 80s cards, but they're finding a way to bounce back a little bit, which we'll get into. That's
sort of like, to be honest with you, I mean, that's sort of the reason why I left the hobby, because, in the, mid 90s, and well, not to mention going to college and trying to meet girls, but, it was just this sort of frustration that these cards, like, all these cards that I collected as a kid were like, they weren't worth anything anymore. And that kind of frustrated me for some reason. And then, then when I rediscovered the hobby, I was like, you know what? The fact, like, these cards bring back like such good memories that they may not be valuable, but they're valuable to me. So.
Well, let's jump into this, because this is something I had written down. So we'll chat a little bit about this and then get into a few other things. But a couple of things I wanted to bring up was, reasons for collecting, reasons for continuing to collect, especially as an adult, not just as a kid who's just kind of buying some packs, having some fun collecting, just collecting to collect. Nowadays, I think there's a couple reasons why people collect. One is certainly nostalgia. That's why you like collecting players that you watched over the years, and different designs and cards that you have memories of. That's certainly a big reason, and that's one of the reasons the Topps products of Topps Heritage and Topps Archives are super popular. I mean, people love all the new stuff like Chrome and stuff as well, but those Archives and Heritage products bring back memories for a lot of people. But another huge reason for people collecting is the value, And that doesn't necessarily mean you're collecting to get rich off of it, or you're collecting to sell them all and make $1 million. But there's something to be said about collecting something that's valuable. There's something that's fun about that. Whether you're collecting old cards, vintage stuff, and watching them rise incrementally year by year, or if you're prospecting on new prospects or rookies that you think are going to increase in value, even if it's just a small margin. If you have $2 cards that become worth $4 or $5, I mean, that piques most people's interest. I mean, sure, you have some people who collect 100% just for the love of it, and they have no value, doesn't really get to them one way or the other at all. But that's, from my opinion, that's a really small percentage of the population. I think people like to collect things that they perceive as valuable and that are valuable. And you see that even with, to take it out of baseball cards, even around the holidays, like the hot toy of the year, people are chasing it. Half the people are chasing it because everyone's chasing it and there's this perception of value for it. Some people are doing that to buy it and turn it around and sell it. Other people are literally just looking at it and looking for an excuse to find it, get it, and give it to their kid who might not even want it, just because of that value. Just hits a chord with people, I think, and gets people's attention.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of just, it's part of the fun, I guess, for me is trying to predict what I think is going to be the next thing. You look at them, and that was another thing with what's been the beauty of YouTube is, I would get these cards and I would try to show them to my friends or to my wife, and they would be like, I don't care. And I don't know if you've had that problem, and and I was just like, man, I feel like I'm the last person left on the planet that still likes to collect. And that was sort of the beauty of YouTube is I love being able to kind of share my thoughts with people on where I think the hobby is going, and part of the fun for me at least is being able to say, okay, well, who are the cards from a particular decade that I think will be valuable in 20 years. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's fun for me to try to guess as to what that will be, and then later on finding out if I was right or wrong about it. And there's been many cases where I've made some really nice purchases that have turned out really well, and there's also been some really, really bad purchases. But I think that's sort of the fun of it is the fact that you could if every single card you bought, they all went up at the same exact rate, it wouldn't be as much fun. And if they weren't worth anything, I think that would kind of lower the fun of it too. So that's just my take on it, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the whole value section. If it wasn't worth anything, I mean, I would still enjoy what I enjoy, and I would enjoy the very basic Topps Philly sets and putting them in a binder year after year. I'd still look forward to that, but there would definitely be a reduction in the amount of money people, including myself, would be willing to spend and put into the hobby if there wasn't a value where if something comes up or something happens, or if you change your mind, that you didn't think, okay, I can move some of this stuff and, not be just stuck in a money pit with it. I think of actually starting lineups, because I was a huge starting lineup fan growing up. In the 80s, I loved the starting lineup figures, and I was actually more into them than cards there for a time. And then over the years, I made a bunch of connections with people, so I was able to buy cases. I would be buying cases of them and selling extras, and being able to kind of semi-fund the collection a little bit. But nowadays, I still enjoy them, and I like, every now and then. I have a few, I don't have a ton, but I'll see them at flea markets and card shows, and there's just, even though a lot of people still like them, and people will pick up from time to time, they'll go and be like, oh, let me go pick up the old, whoever their favorite team is, pick up those cards. There's a stigma stuck to them now that they're not really worth anything anymore, and I think that's really hurt their collectability. There's a few random ones from the late 80s that are super rare that still hold a premium value, but it just seems as a whole, a lot of people actually buy them now the unopened ones, open them and get the cards graded. Sometimes the cards in a high grade sell for more than the figure and card do in the original packaging. So it's interesting. Wow. All right, so let's get into a little bit of talk about the 1980s cards and some of the different sets that you collected growing up, or different cards, or your thoughts actually on what appears to me to be a reintroduction almost. It seems to me like, so we know, and it's well known in the hobby, that 80s is associated with the junk wax era due to overproduction, and things were booming, things were overproduced, and then you had the crash. It all became, I guess, quote unquote, worthless. So a lot of people lost interest in it. And there's still certainly plenty of it that doesn't hold a whole lot of financial value. But I do feel personally like there's been a bit of a bounce back on those 80s cards. Do you have any specific thoughts as to why, or do you want me to give you my thoughts on it first?
Well, I was I brought this up to Mike before the podcast, and I was looking at the 1989 Beckett, and the interesting thing when you look at the Beckett, obviously there are cards, there are players that didn't pan out, like your Jerome Waltons and your maybe your Greg Jeffries. Those cards aren't worth as much as they used to be. But when you look at the prices of cards from the 1980s, and this is 30 years later, by the way, they really haven't changed that much. But one thing that I have noticed, and even vintage cards, I mean, I was looking at the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle. It's listed at $6,600 in this 89 Beckett, and $6,600. It's a lot of money, and if you even a Mickey Mantle 52 Topps Mantle today in a PSA 0 or PSA 1 is going to go for $5,000 to $10,000. What has changed? What I've seen, what has changed in the hobby over the last 30 years, like if I were to have a time machine and kind of tell myself, it's really, and I know you know all about this, Mike, is it's all about condition now. It's become a hobby where it's not good enough to have a card that's in near mint condition. People nowadays it's condition is everything, and having a card that is perfect is so important to everybody. The perfect corners, perfect centering, and you could have cards that you could even see that with 2018 baseball cards, where a card, raw will go for $30, and a PSA 10 will go for $50, and a black label, which is your Beckett, 10 on the corners, 10 on the edges, 10 on the centering, 10 on the surface. A black label will go for $100. And if you look at the cards from the 80s, because we all sort of took care of our cards to a certain extent, but to have a perfect card, from the 80s in a perfect PSA 10, it's exponential. The value of those types of cards, especially if it's a big name guy. There are cards like, especially if you look at the Tiffany cards, which are limited supply, and then if you can get them in that high grade, it doesn't matter that they were mass produced. I mean, those cards, the Tiffany cards, which weren't mass produced, will go for thousands and thousands of dollars. And I've been watching these types of cards just grow exponentially every year, including, one of the cards that I bought, I think about a year ago, the 84 Donruss Don Mattingly. I bought that in a PSA 10 for about $600, and I think it's selling for over $1,000 now. And it just goes to show that people want to collect cards from the 80s, but they're just not interested in, the Norm Charltons and the Cal Daniels that are in terrible condition. They want the special cards from that time, and they want them in like a special condition. So if you have, there is huge room for growth for 80s cards. And I think that a lot of people are kind of rekindling their love for the hobby. Now that, there are people like me that are just they have some disposable income, but they want the best. They don't want, those cards that are at the bottom of your shoebox. They want, the best. They want that 84 Donruss Mattingly in a PSA 10. They want that Jose Canseco 86 Donruss. They don't want it in a crappy, with a bunch of rounded corners. They want the perfect PSA 10 version. So that's my take. But I'll give you a chance on that, Mike. What are your thoughts on it?
I have nothing to add. You literally just took everything I was going to say, and I'm glad you did because it worked out perfectly because it was super well said. So the 80s cards, obviously, the production was very high, and a lot of people collect it. I think the hobby has come back a lot lately. Over the last couple of years, I think it's grown a ton, but it's still not at the level from a pop culture perspective as it was in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, that was where people who probably weren't even that much into baseball kind of collected. Like, everyone was just collecting cards. It was one of the things to do if you were younger. But I think you hit just about everything that I was going to say. I think a big reason that we've seen a bit of a boom in the 80s cards is the reintroduction of collectors, of former collectors. You do have some people who are just getting into the hobby, but I think you have a lot of people who collect it, maybe not super seriously back then. They took their break, they grew up, and now they're getting back into the hobby. So they're being reintroduced, and they want to buy back stuff they don't have, or they want to buy improved versions of what they have, that they found. So nostalgia is a big reason as well. I think nostalgia sells big time across any platform, and you see it. You have the Hall of Fame guys, the legends, of course, they're going to be widely sought after, but you don't have to be a Hall of Famer to have a high collectability. And that's something I like to tell people, because people will be asking me questions sometimes, and they're like, yeah, but is this guy going to be a Hall of Famer? I'm like, it doesn't matter. First off, you have to collect who you like and what you like. But guys can be super popular and still be collectible. Some of the most popular guys from the 80s are Jose Canseco, who's not a Hall of Famer.
True.
Your boy Don Mattingly, who is not a Hall of Famer, who may find his way there at some point. I'm not saying he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying he's not currently a Hall of Famer, but super popular. Yep. You have Darryl Strawberry, who's still... He's not at the level of those two, but he's still a beloved player that people think back on, man, he was so good. And Bo Jackson, who, unfortunately, due to injuries, never kind of became what he could have become. Those are four of the most collectible guys from the 80s. None of them are Hall of Famers. So I think they're all really popular for that nostalgic reason. The reintroduction of the hobby is bringing in people who are looking for these cards, and you nailed it with the high grade, because I think anyone could go and find these cards from the 80s in a 6, 7, or 8. But finding a 10 is a super, super challenge. Even if you go and buy a box of cards and you happen to get one, got to remember they were large sets. They were 700, card sets. It wasn't these 100 card sets that come out now. You open a box and you find one, it's so likely to be off center. It's so likely to have some sort of chipping, because they weren't exactly made on the highest quality cardboard necessarily. So, I mean, finding high grades is tough. Finding high grades just in an old collection is hard enough, because I think people took care of them, put them in binders. You even had top loaders and soft sleeves, but you could still chip those corners in the soft sleeves and stuff.
Yeah, I it's so funny because my dad preached to me, condition is everything. He preached that to me every single time. Every time we went to a card show. And I put all my cards into into the pages, and top loaders. But I look at my cards now that I grew up with, and they all have like rounded corners, like something. I tried to take care of them, but maybe just being a kid, I just didn't take it seriously enough. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it's so hard to I remember there was one PSA submission that I did where I submitted a Barry Bonds 86 Fleer update, and it turned out to be a PSA 10, and that was like one of the coolest things that I've ever, because that was part of my childhood collection, and for that to come back as a PSA 10 was just such an awesome thrill, to be like, wow, that's a card that over all of those years has been able to, it come back as a PSA 10. It was really, really exciting.
Yeah, and even if you thought you were taking care of your cards growing up, sometimes you were doing damage to them and not realizing. Yeah. I actually look back on my 89 Upper Deck Griffey that I had from a kid. I've had it for years in the screw down. My dad put it in a screw down for me, and I remember taking it out, looking at it, and thinking, oh, maybe it's something I want to get graded. I took it out of screw down, and I was like, oh, this was one of the non-recessed screw downs, so the corners are all squashed, so it would probably come back altered. Like, it still looks great. I put it in a magnetic or whatever, so it's still cool. I'm going to keep it forever, but I'm like, yeah, right. It would have been way better off in a top loader. But yeah, I think the registry is another thing that is something that has helped. I think it's helped all card values, all graded card values. And I think the amount of people who are actually involved in the registries is a relatively small number given the amount of collectors out there. But it certainly is something that boosts value because it gets people. Some people are competitive with it. Some people just want to be best. But I think that helps boost. One, it boosts the high grade cards because people are trying to look to get them. And I think it just boosts people looking at even the not low grades, but 8s and 9s because they're picking up cards just to fill out sets and stuff. So I think that's been a big thing across the board, including the 80s. And I guess it was Beckett that put out that article, top 80 cards of the 80s, which I've watched videos on it, and I haven't read the article, but I've been watching videos, and it's just cool to go through and reminisce about some of those cards and see them. And I think when lists and stuff comes out like that, it becomes a conversation piece. It boosts interest, and interest is everything. And there's a lot of interest right now in 80s cards.
Yeah, what I also like about, like, people always ask me, should I get my cards graded? And one of the things I like about getting cards graded is, once they're encapsulated, I feel like, you can feel a little bit safer about the condition of the card. But it's also, it's a huge thing as a buyer. If a card is already in that PSA slab in terms of reliability, I know part of the problem, for a while was like you'd go on eBay and you'd be like, I feel like this guy's trying to hose me. Like, I don't know if he's like legit. And maybe you could look at his eBay score and that'd be one way. But now with the fact that you can not only, you have that kind of guarantee that it's a legitimate card, but also, like a PSA 9 of a particular card usually goes for this. Like, it's very clear about how much that card is worth. So there's a lot more reliability, and it's a lot easier to kind of be like, okay, well, I know how much I should spend on this card because it's easy to look up. Okay, this card in PSA 9 goes for this much. I just feel like it's made things a lot easier from a buyer's perspective and probably a seller's perspective as well. It's very, there's less gray area in terms of, is this card authentic? What is the condition of the card? Because the guy can just say, oh, this is a mint card, and then you get it in the mail and it's not mint. But when it's in that holder, you kind of feel a lot safer about what you're purchasing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it definitely makes you feel better as a buyer. You know what you're getting. And, there's a lot of debate. Oh, well, PSA could be higher, should be higher. You'll see that on eBay a lot too. Undergraded. Okay, but yeah, most of the time because when it's not in the holder, there's that gray area. Mint to one person might not be mint to another. I mean, I think for me, I pay a lot of attention to detail, and I look over the cards, and I see little issues with stuff that I think a lot of people they look at it real quick, and they don't. It does, it could be the smallest of imperfections, but I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to knock it down a point. So when you do have it graded, you know what you have, like you said, and I think it makes it easier to sell things and buy things, and especially with vintage, it makes me feel better. I'm like, all right, I know what I'm getting. I don't want to go buy a card, save a few bucks, go get it graded, and then it's like, oh yeah, this was trimmed or altered in some way. So
yeah, and I'm not saying it's a perfect system. It's definitely not. There's definitely, I'm sure there's different graders that, some that probably grade too high and some that grade too low. And I know over the years, like for example with PSA, I feel like they've gotten more strict with the way that they grade things. So they haven't always been consistent through the years. But it's better than this kind of gray area that we were in, 20 years ago, where you'd go on eBay and you would just kind of go, well, yeah, I don't know if this card is even a real card or not. Without seeing it in person, it's very hard to trust people like on the internet. But that, for me, that's it's become a much more reliable process. Not a perfect process, but a much better process.
There's no doubt about that. PSA has PSA, BGS, SGC, the whole grading turn that the hobby has taken has just taken the hobby by storm. It's a huge thing. It's bigger than I think some people even realize. People are super into it. It's the current way the hobby is being collected, and it's the future of the hobby too. I think maybe even more so. So be interesting to see where things go. Is there any specific sets from the 80s that bring back the best of memories?
Well, 89 Donruss was always the set that I collected the most as a kid. But, obviously, 89 Upper Deck, that was that was the set that kind of was this special set. It was every pack was $1. So I remember collecting 89 Upper Deck. 84 Donruss was a really cool set because of the I don't know if this is true, but I believe that the supply was lower for 84 Donruss, and so it made it a little bit seemed to be a little bit more of a premium set. Of course, it included the Mattingly rookie. I love the 1980 top set. I always really liked. I liked all three sets from 87. The 87 Fleer, 87 Tops, and 87 Donruss, and 86 Donruss. Those I wrote down a couple of the sets that I like the best, but those are the ones that stand out for me. How about you, Mike? Which sets do you like the best from the 80s?
I really actually got started with the hobby because of 89 Tops, so I've always just loved that 89 Top simple design. I've always liked it. Brings back a ton of great memories. So 89's really, when I got started, I got a couple packs of cards for my birthday, had a birthday party. Some kid gave me a few packs, and I remember opening with my dad and going through the cards. He's telling me about the players, and that's really what kind of got things going. And but then I remember like the 89 Upper Deck, and even at that time, there was so much overflow of all the old stuff. I remember immediately opening up like 88 Tops, 87 Tops, some 86 Tops, but not crazy amounts. Then the 89 Donruss, of course, and 89 Fleer, 88 Fleer, just all that Sport Flicks. I used to buy the Sport Flicks. They don't seem to have maintained a ton of value. I think I bought a Mike Schmidt and a PSA 10 just for the heck of it, like an 88 Sport Flicks. It was like nice. $8 or something. But all that stuff was awesome. And just a lot of fun. I think 88 Tops was actually the first set I tried to put together myself. I had most of them, and then you probably took like a 20-year break before I finished it.
Yeah, I remember I put together 89 Donruss, and I remember when 1990 Leaf came out, that putting that set together was a lot of fun. That was another real, like back then it was like every card was like 50, even the common cards were like 50 cents. So to be able to put together, like I remember I put it in a nice, every single card in a page and a binder. So that was a lot of fun putting together the 1990 Leaf set, and I did the same thing with 1991 Stadium Club the next year. I really loved Stadium Club when that came out. But unfortunately, I kind of, after that, I sort of stopped putting sets together. I don't know if you continued doing that. I can't even tell you the last time I tried to even attempt to put a set together.
90 Leaf.
So it's been more about, what's that?
No, I was just going to say 90 Leaf was an unbelievably amazing set. I still go back on it.
Yeah.
And opened a pack of it in that rookie card explosion box the other day.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, the set's awesome. It's like simplistic, but it's awesome. But I remember that being like the big set back then, like the Frank Thomas and whatever. That was going to be the set that was going to be worth, $10,000 in 2019.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean,
right.
I'm assuming it's probably worth like $15 now. I don't even know. I mean, get a high grade Thomas, I guess it's all right. But no, yeah, set collecting, I can't do it anymore. I put together like the Phillies team sets year by year in the binders, but as far as a set, I don't really care anymore about making sets. That's the one thing I know I've determined in the hobby. I'm definitely just not a set collector. I like base cards. I think base cards are cool. Like even cheap regular tops, but I'll pick out like, I don't know, I open a box and I'll go through them. Usually pull out between 9 and 27 and toss them in a couple pages. And then I'll put like a few pages together from the different products that I break during the course of the year and just throw them in a binder. And at some point you flip through them and go, oh, wow, these cards are actually pretty damn nice. You probably don't appreciate them as much as I should. And then other times I'm like, how'd this player get in here? This guy stinks.
Yeah, I think in terms of building sets, like I think that Topps that is one thing that they kind of shot their foot a little bit on. What do they have, like 30, 35 products out every year now? And with this, because there's so much variety, it's like it's impossible to even focus on one product. There's just so much out there that between low end, middle tier, and then there's so much high end where like every single card is a hit. And I think that's part of the problem. Is there's just so many sets out there that it's like hard to focus on building a set. When you're like, Topps Series 1 is out, and then before you know it, like Bowman's out, Bowman Chrome is out. And you're like, well, do I want to continue to build a top set when I could, get the latest release that's out there? And I think that's sort of killed the idea of building sets nowadays.
Yeah, I think the hardcore set collectors are always going to be hardcore set collectors and build their sets. But I think if you were just kind of like a general person that if the only release was Topps, I'd probably build the set. But the fact that as you said, Topps came out, and since Topps came out, you already had Heritage come out, and now Opening Day is out. And I'm pretty sure Topps Inception came out like 2 days ago, and Gypsy Queen comes out next week. So before Opening Day, you have 5 sets out. And then I think Bowman's a few weeks later, and then it might relax for a little bit, but at some point there's an explosion of products in June where you have the Topps Finest, the Topps Chrome, the Bowman Chrome, the 800 other things. Like you can't keep track of it.
It really, and then there's so many products, I don't know, in my opinion, that are just way too similar. Like Topps Archives and Topps Heritage, for example, they just feel to me like you could almost consolidate that into like one product. I don't know. They're just, and then there's so many of these high end products where it's like, every card is a hit, and it gets to a point where it's like, relics do they even have any value? Because there's relics and even autographs. I mean, like we all know the players out there that they sign so many autographs that it's like, okay, I've got his auto in Bowman, I've got his auto in Archives, I got his auto in Triple Threads, and I don't know. It's just it seems like sometimes it's just overkill.
They've definitely gone over the top with certain things. It's just especially that crazy high end stuff that you talk about. Like they'll release a product one year and they're like, it didn't quite sell enough, so that's done. We're not going to do that anymore. But I mean, there's good things and bad things about having a bunch of different products, especially you'll have different things in different products and different players. And obviously certain players, you'll have certain guys who sign a ton as a rookie, and then after that, they don't really sign as much. They might only sign in certain products. So the hobby has certainly changed. I think if you went back 25, 30 years, you would never have thought, wait, they're making like 40 different products, and you would never even anticipate autographs and relics and all that. And another thing that's kind of taken a hit is even the one-of-ones. Like, it's like there's certain one-of-ones that I think will maintain a lot of collectability. I think the Topps Chrome Superfractor is a sought-after card. People like to do that rainbow, but like the one-of-one out of Topps Fire, like no one really cares. The one-of-one out of this and that. I mean, you're at the point where you have common one-of-ones you could probably buy for like $20 on eBay.
Right.
So it's not like it was even 5 years ago where it's like, oh my gosh, it's the one-of-one. Even though it's some mediocre shortstop, like it'd still be like a $200 card. Those days I think have come and gone because there's just so much.
I think one of the, like you posted on YouTube give us some of your questions. I think somebody asked if I'd rather get a base rookie card or a relic. And while it's cool to hit a relic, that in the long run, I feel like I'd rather have a nice rookie card than a relic, because it's just like with the relic cards, there's just so many of them, and I don't know, and I guess I'd rather have the base card with the rookie logo in the corner, So it's just funny, because you would think that you would much rather to get a hit like an autograph or a relic, but in a lot of cases I'd rather just get a simple base rookie card, which doesn't make any sense. But
I think there's a lot of people that are going to that mindset, though. I mean, you're going to have people who are hit chasers, and that's still a thing for sure. But I think there's a lot of people kind of going back to their roots a little bit and getting more into the rookie cards and wanting to collect them. And then, of course, with grading, you can enhance the value. And, of course, you have parallels and different things like that as well. But I'm more with you, because I'm personally not really into relics. There's a few products here and there that I'm like, oh, that's a cool looking card. But most of the time, I don't know. I'm over that. Like when they first start doing it, when Upper Deck had it in the early 2000s, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's a piece of his bat. But at this point, I'm like, I'm kind of like, no, just save the bat. Go put the bat in the Hall of Fame. Don't chop it up and put it on baseball cards. But yeah, it's the relic thing has been a little overkill. But let's you mentioned some of those questions, and we did get some questions in on YouTube and Facebook as well. So let's tackle a few of them. We'll give our thoughts on a few of the questions from some of the listeners out there. All right, so what do we got here? We got Chris asking, he made a comment and asked a question. He said, the hobby has been booming. Do you think Topps needs to be careful with the amount of product they release? How much damage will a few years of lackluster rookies in many releases do? So we kind of gave our thoughts on that a little bit with the amount of stuff released, and I think we both kind of agreed that they probably shouldn't expand anymore. You can make an argument that it's already a little bit too many, but at the same time, you need to see their perspective that they do need to produce a certain amount of product to turn a profit, because it's not just the cost of producing the cards. I think the majority of the cost for Topps, from my opinion, this is not without knowing facts, but I'm sure the amount of money they have to pay for these exclusive deals and the amount of money they have to pay athletes to sign stuff and all that, I'm sure is tremendous. So, I think producing the cardboard cards is the least of their worries to turn a profit. But what are your thoughts on the rookie question?
Yeah, I know. For me, it's hard to imagine all of those rookie cards, continuing to have value. I think you're already seeing that with Chris Bryant. He was one of the first guys that at least that I was aware of, that just had so many rookie cards. And then on top of that, he had two Bowman Chrome autos. So usually you just have one Bowman Chrome auto, but he had two Bowman Chrome autos that were like considered to be his first Bowman Chrome autos. And then there was just rookies upon rookies upon rookies. I guess what I've seen at least is that people tend to gravitate to certain products, such as the base Topps card, the Bowman Chrome auto, maybe the archives card, or so that there are certain rookies that'll survive, I think, but there's going to be a lot of rookie cards that are created just to hammer out those 30 to 35 products that just get lost in the shuffle. I mean, think about last year, 2018, with guys like Acuna and Shohei Ohtani especially. I mean, how many rookies just in Topps alone? Because you had him in Topps Series 1, you had him in Series 2, you had him in Update, and then in Update you'd have they'd be like 7 or 8 different OTs just within Update, because there'd be the base card, then there'd be like Shohei Ohtani throwing and Shohei Ohtani hitting, and Future Stars card. It's it gets to a point where like you don't even know what to collect anymore. So I don't think it's going to help the value of those. But there will be one or two cards that eventually, over time, people will gravitate.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what the players do. If players don't produce, people aren't going to generally have interest. So
Sure.
we'll see what happens and how players develop. This year, I mean, there's not really any hot rookies in the product so far. That will change as the year goes on. Eloy Jimenez, now that he's going to be with the White Sox, I'm sure he'll be on being cards. They'll probably start coming out maybe around June or so, and pack pulled releases. And then Vlad Guerrero Jr., when he gets in there, those will probably be the two hottest guys I would think off the top of my head. And we'll see. We'll see how some of the guys from last year do. A few of them will probably have big years, and their cards will continue to keep pace and maybe rise. And some of the guys might fall off, and their cards will take a hit. But it's a lot of what have you done for me lately with rookie cards for sure.
Yep.
All right, we got another question from Coach and Sons. He wants to know if either of us know why there are no Giancarlo Stanton Yankees cards, auto cards. He hasn't been in a release. I guess I don't know for sure because I haven't really paid attention. I haven't seen one, and I would say simply it's probably because Giancarlo Stanton's got that money coming in from that Marlins contract, and he's probably just not that interested in signing. I'd imagine that Topps has approached them, maybe not for every product, but high-end products. And some players just don't want to sign, and they don't sign. They're just not in products.
Yeah, my guess is that the simple answer is probably the correct answer, which is that he just didn't want to sign it. He probably didn't want to sign a bunch of autographs on cards. He's already making an insane amount of money, and so I don't know. I now that you mention it, I don't think I have seen his autograph with him as a Yankee. But I do have some of his stuff. Like I pulled an autograph. I have the Bowman Chrome auto when he was with the Marlins, and then I forget if it was like Triple Threads or Tribute. I hit that as part of like the Best of Baseball out of 10. But those were both with him with the Marlins.
Yeah, I just don't think he's been in anything recently. And it just depends. Right. Like Mike Trout's got an exclusive deal with Topps, so he's going to be there for a few years doing them. But, I mean, he's only signing probably 25 cards in each product. You don't have Mike Trout as a wide autograph release. That's why they kind of hammer those rookie guys early on. And you'll see these guys signing thousands of autographs in every product because at the time, these guys, they're just making it to the majors. They haven't earned a ton of money, and they go, oh, yeah, I'll sign that. That sounds like easy money. And then next thing you know, they're locked in a room for 2 weeks signing cards all day. They're probably like, oh, I'm never doing this again. All right, we got Brandon S. He's saying, when trying to figure out what to collect, first, player-specific rookie cards, autos, graded cards, vintage, junk wax, new, how would you go about deciding which direction to go?
Wow. Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to ask that question to because I'm all over the place. My strategy is buy what you like. Buy a little. I try to buy a little bit of everything. Don't. It's funny because a lot of people will tell you like try to find a niche. I actually don't recommend that. I really enjoy collecting a little bit of everything. There was like one of the reasons that I got back into collecting is I bought an 1888 Old Judge card, and it's one of the coolest cards that I've ever purchased. It was about $100, and it's just this old school picture of a guy when photography was brand new. Such an awesome card. But then I also love to collect the more recent stuff. I recommend collecting a little bit of everything. Find what you really enjoy, and then go from there. But don't limit yourself to being like, I'm only going to collect this type of card. maybe in the beginning, try out a little bit of everything, and then find out what you really like, and then go from there.
Yeah,
what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. You have to do what you like. You have to do what makes you happy. I don't think you should chase stuff just because of value. I also don't think you should ignore value. I think the thing I tell people a lot, I'm like, hey, if I decide to buy a card, a lot of the times, one of the things I think of, among other things, is if I decide to resell this, what can I get out of it? Can I get close to the money back? And if the answer is yes, then it's a no-brainer. Why not? If I'm lucky and I would decide to resell it and make money, that's great. If I take a very small hit, it's not that big of a deal. So I think value, when you're putting real money into stuff, is important. It's really important to consider. But you got to buy and collect what you like. And I think after a while, you will gravitate towards certain things. I know over the years, I've gravitated away from set collecting. I've gravitated away from relic cards. I am definitely into autographs. I like autographs a lot. I like the pack pulled stuff, and I actually like the IP stuff, the PSA DNA type of stuff as well. But I like specific sets, kind of. I'm into rookies, and I'm into players and teams. So, you're going to do a little bit of everything. I agree with you about doing everything. I think if you're a hardcore baseball fan, and if you're a hardcore baseball card fan, then I don't see how you don't dabble at least a little bit in everything. I think I actually personally get a little annoyed when people go over the top one way or the other. Like, you got to go with the new stuff. Or you have to just go with the old stuff. Like, to me, you need to have a nice balance of respecting the past, but just as important is respecting how good the current players are, because there is a ridiculously, unbelievably group of talented baseball players out there right now that some of them have a chance to go down as the best of all time. So I think you got to find that balance somehow, some way. One way that I've done it with getting more into the vintage stuff is to kind of, as a Phillies fan and a Phillies collector, I basically decided I'm going to try and get like one example of all the different sets, different releases, different styles of cards, pre-war, all that stuff. And that's the way I've kind of been able to delve a little bit into it. And then I want to get some of the Hall of Famers in the other cards as well, but I don't need to get everyone, and I don't even need to get just Hall of Famers. I can get the really good players that made an impact on the game. So I think you'll find your way the more you collect. Collecting's just kind of like everything else in life. The more experience you get with it, the more you'll kind of find yourself.
Right. Just try to limit the amount of packs you bust.
Yeah, break some packs for fun, of course, but you don't want to go over the top with it. If you go over the top with it, and that's how you'll find yourself kind of just chasing hits or chasing value, and you're just going to get into that quicksand, and it's going to be a tough task to get out of it.
Right. Just don't spend your 100% budget on just ripping packs. That's just my personal advice, but you can still do it if you want. But I would just, it's still fun to do, but like Mike said, it's there's something that I really enjoy about having a really nice card. And I know it may not be as exciting, short term to buy a really nice card, like spend your entire budget on one card. But in the long run, the cards that I've enjoyed most in my collection are the ones that I spent a little extra on, and and then the cards that I busted as part of packs are sitting at the bottom of shoe boxes that I haven't looked at in years. So
yeah, there's definitely a complexity to breaking packs. You have the thrill and the gamble aspect and all that, and if you do hit something big, it certainly creates a memory, a long-lasting memory, but you have to be selective with what products you buy, and that goes with all aspects of breaking, even group breaking. I still participate in some group breaks from time to time. If there's a product that I'm not interested in breaking, but I'm like, I'll take a shot on the Phillies. Maybe I get something good. If not, I get some base, as long as it's not that expensive, I'll do stuff like that. But some people kind of take that too far too, and they're like scouting out which teams are the best, and they're spending, and next thing you know, you're spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars and don't have a whole lot to show for it. All right, we have a question from Scott M asking about if you want to get a card crossed over from Beckett to PSA, will PSA take the card out of the Beckett case? They will. You can do that. Some people don't like to do that because they feel like there's a bias. Some people like to crack it out themselves and resend it in. There's, of course, a risk with that of damaging the card. So you can get that done if you so desire. I personally I've never done that.
Yeah, I mean, from personal experience, like I know that you can submit them still in the Beckett holder, but it really, I think a lot of times they look at the subgrades. I think there is a bias. I do think they look at those subgrades. If a lot of the subgrades are 9.5s or higher, you're probably going to be able to cross it over successfully. But if you have like a 9.5 with like 2 9.5s and 2 9s of subs, they're probably not going to cross over. And you might be better off actually cracking it out. But it's a gamble either way. And I've had experiences where I've submitted it and they can't, the PSA sent them right back to me in the Beckett holder. So, but the nice thing is that they'll leave it in the Beckett holder, so you don't have to worry about cracking it out and resubmitting it. But so I can see both arguments, but that's sort of my recommendation there.
I don't know if you have time for this, but we have a question asking for you to list the top 10 Yankees of all time. Not your favorite, but who do you think are the best? I mean, that's a deep list to go through.
Well, all right. So, so you have Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, DiMaggio. Like, obviously, you got those guys. You got Berra. You got Jeter. You got Mo. You got Whitey Ford, right? So that's how many is that?
You're up to 8, I believe.
8. So I feel like those are the obvious guys, right? Then you start to get into like the less like that. That's where you kind of like that's where your list that's where your tier 1 ends, or maybe maybe Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, DiMaggio might be tier 1, maybe that might be tier 1, and then you got tier 2, but tier 3 is where it gets a little bit more difficult, I think. So I guess you got to put Bill Dickey in there. Just mainly because he was 11. I think he had 11 years, batted 300, and was a really great catcher for the Yankees. Then there's so many other guys. I mean, you could go Reggie, you can go A-Rod, you can go Mattingly, Pettit, Posada. I don't know. I mean,
Brian Taylor doesn't make the cut.
Brian Taylor. I don't know, man. You might slap me for saying this, Mike, but I might go with A-Rod. I mean, he won 2 MVPs with it's so hard with him because of all the steroid stuff, but 2 MVP seasons. I mean, he basically carried the Yankees to the 2009 World Series championship. He basically carried them on his back for that. And then Matsui kind of finished it off. But,
yeah, I'm well aware of the way that 2009 World Series ended.
Sorry, I forgot for a second.
Matsui was just unstoppable. I think he had like 570 or something.
Yeah, that especially that was that Game 6. Maybe Game 5.
I think Game 6 he had like a 3-run homer or something. I was like, this is just about done.
Right. What's funny about that is I remember he signed with the Tampa Bay Rays in the off season, and I remember he came back to Yankee Stadium, and I think he hit a home run against the Yankees. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. I was at Yankee Stadium when he hit that home run, and I'd never seen the stadium cheer for like the other team hitting a home run. It was pretty cool. But Matsui deserved it. I mean, he was unbelievable in that series. But I don't know. Yeah, I'll probably go. I guess I'll go A-Rod as the 10th greatest. Yeah, I mean, A-Rod. A lot of people. He's got one of the greatest minds I've ever seen. I love watching him do analysis. I know there's a lot of love-hate with him, but I mean, he was one of the greats. The fact that he was able to just move over to third base and be, basically a Gold Glove third base, and still, Win a couple MVPs with the Yankees is pretty impressive. So
I think it's a shame he got caught up in all the controversy stuff because, again, his numbers were unbelievable. He's a great player, and I almost feel like I don't know, he hasn't gotten really the attention he deserves. I don't think he gets the level of hate that some of the other steroid guys get, but he doesn't really get the attention that maybe he deserves. So we'll see what happens in time. But he certainly had a great career, both in Seattle and with the Yankees, and that brief stop in Texas. Bowman 1951 says, how well do you think 2019 Series 2 will do? With the potential of players like Eloy Jimenez, Vlad Jr., etc. being in the release. And I think it definitely depends on what is in that checklist. It's going to depend. I think Eloy Jimenez will be a lock. I believe he's going to be on the opening day roster because he just signed the 8-year extension. So he should be in it, and that'll be a card to chase. Guerrero, it depends with the oblique, how long he's held out. I mean, he may not make the cut. I wouldn't bet on him being in Series 2. I think there's a very good chance, much like Juan Soto, that he gets held out to update. So Jimenez may be in Series 2. Guerrero might wait till update. I mean, he'll be in a product or two before that. But I don't know. I don't think the level of rookies. So 2 years ago, I was like, the level of rookies is ridiculous with Judge Mania and Benintendi, and you had Bregman and a few other big name guys. And I remember last year thinking that there's no way it can be as hyped up. And then you had the Ohtani Mania, which it was the fact that he's a great talent, of course, but the fact that he was doing two different things was unique, which drew a lot of attention. And then the Japanese market sent it over the top. And then you had, a whole crew of rookies. I mean, last year's rookie class is underrated, in my opinion. I don't think people even actually grasp how great it could be with Torres and even Hoskins, who almost gets forgotten as that part of that rookie class, Rafael Devers and Soto, of course, and Acuna. So it depends on who's going to be in there. I wouldn't expect a booming amount of rookies, though, in Series 2.
Yeah, and that's that's why updates usually the way to go, because even if Eloy Jimenez, like you mentioned, is in Series 2, he's going to be an update as well. So that's the beauty of update, is you get the guys that were in Series 2 and you get the guys that were only in update. So, but yeah, I agree. You really need to kind of see who makes the checklist. But I can see Vlad. Vlad is in there. That's going to be huge when it comes out. Especially people are going to want to get their hands on that. And then you might have Fernando Tatis Jr. possibly. Probably not, but there's a chance that he might make it into Series 2. And then there's guys like Nick Senzel and Bo Bichette. Those are all guys that could make it, but again, it really depends on when they get called up. And but I do think that people are going to go crazy when Vlad has his first card. People are going to be buying up that product like crazy, at least initially.
I don't think I've ever seen a guy who's never stepped in the major league batter's box get so much hype. There have been a lot of really hyped prospects over the years. Some have made it and some haven't. But the level of hype and the level of investment in his cards, and when he's outselling his dad, who's a freaking Hall of Famer, like 20 to 1, it's unbelievable. It's so crazy. It's just... Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I know all the grades that the scouts have given him a lot of them have been record setting, and he's obviously performed in the minors, but holy Lord, is there a lot of hype for this kid.
Just another example of baseball collectors being completely irrational.
It's insane. And I mean, hey, if he goes down as one of the top 3 greatest players of all time, I guess those investments will pay off. But if he's only one of the 25 best players of all time, they might not. So we'll see. The hype. The hype's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are Vlad Jr. rookie cards that sell for more than Babe Ruth 33 Gaudy Babe Ruth cards, which is just
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
All right.
Like if you brought somebody that didn't know anything about the hobby into this, you'd be like, what why? I don't get it.
Yep, a lot of people like, who's Vladimir Guerrero? Didn't he stop playing like 20 years ago?
Right.
All right, we got some more questions. We'll try and get through them as quickly as we can. This podcast is going over the hour mark, as I kind of anticipated it going, but I appreciate Joe, a.k.a. Silver Jackify, joining me here on Hobby Talk with MikeO. If you guys are listening on SoundCloud, iTunes, or YouTube, feel free to post a comment below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, share it. Certainly would appreciate it. And check out Silver Jackify over on YouTube. All you have to do is go to YouTube, type in Silver Jackify, and a whole bunch of videos with a whole lot of views will pop up, and I'm sure you'll enjoy them. So the next question is coming from the Card Dreamer. He says, is grading vintage or modern cards better for long-term investment? So do you have a specific thought on that? Because it can be probably more complex than a lot of people would think.
Yeah. I guess it really comes down to, it's a very generic question, but, I'll say it again, is that, condition is everything. So if you're going to, whether it be getting cards graded, especially with vintage cards, if it turns out to be a high grade card, it could seriously increase the value of your card, short term and long term. I think over the long term, again, some of these low grade cards are not going to hold up as much value, I don't think. But these special cards that are in a PSA 10 or vintage cards that are high grade cards are always going to have value, and having them in the holder increases reliability if you're selling the cards. So I'm a big fan of getting cards graded, but you want to make sure you're getting the right cards graded. So what I would recommend is, if you are going to get cards graded, analyze the card yourself. What do you think the grade is going to be? And then look up that card, see how much that card, how much, so I think this card is a PSA 6. How much does that card go for? And then see if it's worth it for you to, if you consider the fees associated with submitting it, it sometimes can be pretty expensive. Is it worth it for you to then go ahead and get it graded based on, the value of the card?
There is a lot of expense involved in grading, so there's times where it makes more sense to just go out and buy the graded card you're interested in. Right. I do think the easy answer is, of course, vintage. And I think vintage is certainly the safer way to go for graded cards. It's going to hold value and probably slowly increase. High grade vintage is probably going to continue to be very high. I think the majority of people are priced out of high grade vintage of the superstars. I do think there's room for growth in the lower graded vintage stuff. In terms of modern stuff, anything under a 9, you can, for the most part, forget. There's a few exceptions, few and far between. The 93 SP Jeter, which is a notoriously well-known, difficult card to grade. That card's so expensive that you may have to settle for a lower graded card. A 9 can be okay to pick up for your collection if you just want to collect the card slabbed, but with modern stuff, if you're doing it for an investment purpose, it's got to be a 10, and you got to make sure it's the right card, the right player, the right release. If you're looking to spend money, say on a Ronald Acuna Jr., and you're looking for just a good rookie card, I think that Series 2 card is a great card. It's the short print, super short print, whatever you want to call it. That's a card that's really tough to get in a 10. That price is blown up a lot also in the last couple months. So it was like a $150 card. It's probably like $300 now, but it has $500 card written all over it for the future, pending him continuing to be what we think he could be. So I do think the safe investment is vintage, but I wouldn't sleep on modern. We got to see the way players and teams and everything develops in the next 20 years. Eventually, I feel like there'll be less people around who ever saw certain Hall of Famers in the 50s play. but you're still going to have the legend being passed along. Like you look at like super old school tobacco stuff. Most of those players, like no one saw any of those guys play, but they're very rare. So it's weird. It's going to be weird to see how things develop going forward, but it's certainly something to think about. All right, Dustin Bellinger wants to know some unique items in your collection that collectors may not be familiar with. Anything jump out at you, Joe?
I'm not. I was thinking about that because I saw his comment on that, and I think I'm more about. I've always been a baseball card guy. I mean, I have a couple of. I have a Mariano Rivera signed bat. I have a Mickey Mantle auto that I got as a kid, and my dad, went and met Joe DiMaggio and had an index card filled out, signed to myself and my brother. So I have some kind of cool things. I have a Phil Rizzuto auto. But I've always been, focused very much on the, baseball cards. And, like I said, my whole thing is, owning a little bit of everything, like owning a piece of history from the beginning of baseball cards to today. And you guys, I think, have seen, I haven't made any, I've made many videos of my top baseball cards. So I'm sure if you guys have checked out my channel, you know exactly some of those cards that I'm talking about.
Some of them are definitely top baseball card, top flight baseball cards.
Thanks, Mike.
There's not much junk in the top of your list, but yeah, unique items. I mean, I have stuff here and there, but nothing too crazy. I do have some game used stuff. I was into the game used jerseys a lot at one point, so I actually have a Russell Branyan Phillies game used jersey. Russell Branyan had 9 at-bats with the Phillies, and he homered twice. So I feel like there's a good chance he homered while wearing that jersey. But yeah, I used to pick up a lot of stuff like that at Phillies charity events. But as that stuff, even the market for that stuff has risen, really, it's tough to buy that stuff at a reasonable price now. Even like common nobody players, they auction all that stuff off. I used to actually have some old ticket stubs. My dad gave me some ticket stubs that he got from someone, old Yankees, like World Series ticket stubs. And we decided to sell them probably like 15 years ago. And we got, I don't remember exactly what it was, but we got good money for them. But now I'm like, oh man, I probably could have gotten them graded, and that whole market's changed too. So there's a lot of unique stuff out there. We got a few more to get to. We got JVP Baseball. Would you rather pull a rookie card of a decent player like Corey Seager or Anthony Rendon, or pull a relic card of them?
Yep, I think we answered that question earlier, but yeah, definitely for me a rookie card. That's just my. I've never been really into the relics, so I probably would just prefer to just get a base rookie card, to be honest.
I'll put it this way. If I did that, I'd be more likely to keep the rookie card. If I hit the relic, I would probably turn around and just sell it and put that money into the collection. That's just the way I go. Next one's from some guy, Silver Jackify. Why is Silver Jackify so awesome?
I don't know. I just, thank you, Silver Jackify, first of all, for saying that. But, I don't know. I wake up every day and I'm just awesome. So,
hey, if you're born with awesome, you're born with awesome. That's just the way. That's just the way it goes for some people. Marky Michaels asks, besides Acuna, Soto, Albies, Andujar, who I didn't mention before, Torres, and even Robles, is there any of the 18 rookies that will surprise this year? Was thinking maybe Richard Urena or Tyler Wade could have a good year. Any under the radar guys that you're thinking about from 18?
Well, I think Ahmed Rosario was in 2018. I could see he was a highly touted prospect, and I know that toward later in the year, I feel like he was doing pretty well. I think he was hitting like 300 like late in the year. I know that guy Franmil Reyes. Only because, I play a lot of fantasy baseball, and I had him on my team, and he was mashing for a while, like late in the season last year. So he might be somebody to keep an eye on. Another guy that, speaking of fantasy baseball, and I know he wasn't in 2018, but that guy, Raul Mondesi, who's now Alberto Mondesi, I believe his name is. He, in 54 games last year, I think he had like 11 home runs and 27 stolen bases. And you can imagine if you were to do that over a full season, that's 30 to 35 home runs and 80 to 90 stolen bases. So I know that just because I do fantasy, and those are some of the things that like I noticed, he was getting taken in like the fourth round. And I was like, who is this guy? And I looked into his numbers. And I'm like, wow, I can understand why people are kind of excited about this kid. And I'm sure he plays for Kansas City. A lot of people may not have heard about him, but he's just somebody to keep an eye on. And I'm sure you can get very cheap right now.
Yeah, 18. I'm telling you, 18 is so deep. Just even in his comment, he didn't mention Ohtani, who will come back as a DH at some point this year. We'll see what he does. Rhys Hoskins, we'll see how he performs this year with some more all-star caliber players in the lineup. Rafael Devers, who's still only 21 years old, I feel like he hasn't gotten a whole lot of respect in the hobby. His stuff's actually come down quite a bit. I still think he can mesh. And Rosario's the guy I was going to mention. I think he's just loaded with talent. And, I mean, his stuff's probably, I'm not saying it's dirt cheap, but it's probably not overly expensive. So if you want to take a little gamble, I think they're all, he's a guy you could certainly look at.
Yep.
All right, so what else we got here? Favorite set from the 90s. You have a favorite set from the 90s, Quick?
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned a couple of them, 90 Leaf. I really like 1990 Tops for some reason. I've always liked that set.
I always like that, too, for some reason. I think it's just because I was collecting so much of it, but like that color around the borders, this is something cool about it.
Yeah, I always loved that Frank Thomas card. Would love to get the no name on front, but I probably never get that card. And 92 Bowman. You gotta love 92 Bowman. I mean, there's some of the
rookies are brutal, but it's still an awesome set.
Like that Rivera rookie is just so awesome. I love that Rivera rookie. He looks like he's still in Panama, and he's like, he's got those cargo shorts on, and I just like, I think there's a Manny Ramirez card from that set, and the Mike Piazza card, and then of course the SP, the 93 SP with Jeter, the 94 SP with A-Rod. I think what was it? Was it the first Bowman Chrome set? I think was in the 90s.
Bowman Chrome's first year was 97. Yeah, that was the 97. Year with Beltre and Halliday. My favorite is still, I think, 93 Finest. I love that design. That's still my favorite year of Finest. Finest has had some great sets, and they've had some kind of dud sets. The follow-up on 93 Finest and 94 Finest with the green borders didn't quite live up to the 93 release, but it's an awesome set. But, hey, there's a lot of awesome baseball cards in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and hopefully long into the future. Ray from Philly wants to know what Joe's favorite 80s set is. So I'm sure you've mentioned the 80s sets, but let's satisfy Ray with what your favorite is.
Favorite? I'll say it again. It's it's 89 Dunruss. It's just I just love that set. There's so many great rookies in it, and it's it's very nostalgic for me because I bought. There was one point where I bought an entire case of 89 Dunruss cards, and I just still remember just ripping through all those packs, and it's really more of a nostalgic thing. I don't necessarily think that it's the greatest design ever, but it's got a lot of really nice rookie cards in it, and it just brings back a lot of memories for me.
How many Griffies did you pull out of a case?
Oh my goodness! You know what? What I noticed is that
because it's weird, right? You'll get boxes with none, and then you'll get a box with like 4 or 5 of them.
Right, but there are definitely cards that have to be double printed. Like I must have like 100 Kurt Schilling rookie cards. Like there's so many Kurt Schillings. There's certain cards that I have so many copies of that, and Griffey doesn't pop up as much. It's still there, and like you said, and sometimes you'll hit 3 of them, but there'll be a lot of times where you'll hit none in an entire box. So, but you'll always hit a Kurt Schilling or a Craig Biggio. That was another one that's double printed.
Do you have, I didn't really actually think about this question, but I want to get to it because it was asked on your video. What do you think is the most underrated rookie card from the 80s, specifically a Topps product?
Strawberry, like I think you mentioned him earlier, the 83 Topps traded Strawberry in a PSA 10. I just bought that for $100 in a PSA 10. I mean, it's, absolutely beautiful card. A huge player in New York. I'm surprised these cards don't go for more. I've always talked about the 87 Topps Tiffany Maddox. A PSA 10 of that card is like $200, whereas like Clemens 85 Topps Tiffany is like goes for like $5,000. And so I'm just surprised that the Maddox card doesn't go for more. I know that this isn't Topps, but the 84 Donruss Joe Carter always kind of when you talk about undervalued, I always think of Joe Carter or the 86 Donruss Fred McGriff. Those are two cards that I think are way underrated.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see both of them get a little more attention. I think the McGriff probably has some potential to grow, should he eventually, and I think he will find his way into the Hall of Fame at some point. I mean, not to get into the whole Harold Baines conversation, because that could be a whole big thing, but I do think him getting in opens the door quite a bit for a lot of other guys who are specifically from the 80s that are kind of deemed as legendary players that, you can make an argument maybe they did or didn't have enough numbers, but maybe their reign of dominance gets them in. And I think Mattingly, Dale Murphy, Fred McGriff, these are all guys that you have to kind of consider and give them a really strong, realistic chance of at some point, finding their way to Cooperstown. And if they do, that'll certainly give them a little boost in the hobby.
Yep.
All right. Final questions from Victor over on the Facebook page. I had posted something, and he wanted to know if he was curious whether there were any set registries we're working on, if any. I don't know if you do the set registries too much. I usually use them more as a checklist, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I do not. I never wanted to limit myself to just PSA or just SGC or just Beckett. So I feel like if you're going to do the registries, you're kind of like, now my whole point of what I've been talking about is that, like, I like to own a little bit of everything, and I don't want to limit myself to just vintage, to just PSA. So that's sort of the reason why I've never gotten into it.
Yeah, I think they're fun, and I understand why people are into them. I just haven't specifically been able to get hardcore into them. I started the basic Richie Ashburn set registry, and it's mostly just to use it as a checklist, and I'm actually at the point where all I need is the rookie card. So, I've kind of blown through that in a couple months, and I did start one at one point with the 89 Topps, because we were talking about earlier, I'm a big 89 Topps fan. So I was like, let me do the Hall of Fame set from 89 Topps. And then you realize, like, holy Lord, there's a lot of Hall of Famers in 89 Topps. And even at like $10, $15 a piece, it adds up a little bit. So I kind of started it, and I'll probably eventually try and finish it. But I don't get kind of caught up in the whole ranking or anything. And then his final point was, does it appear to you, or does it appear to us, that PSA is really hard at grading cards from the 80s? And just my thought on it is, I don't think that they're specifically hard on it. I just think those cards are tough to get graded. I think if you open a pack of 2019 product, it can be more difficult to get a PSA 10 than people realize. I'm not saying it's necessarily hard. I mean, 10s, you can get 10s. You just have to pay attention to it. Not every card that comes out of a pack is a 10. There's many issues that I see come up on really clean products. So if you drop that back and that quality control back a few decades, there's going to be more centering issues. It's lighter paper. They've been around for a long time, so there's just so many little things that can go wrong that I just think cards can be more difficult to grade than I think people realize. So I don't think PSA is specifically tough on those cards. I just think there's a lot that can go wrong, and it's more common to probably get a PSA 8 than it is to get a PSA 10.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's funny because it's almost like he's asking do I think that they're hard on it? They definitely, I think it's hard to have cards, that are now over 30 years old, that are still perfect, or in gen mint condition. But clearly it's a fact that they're difficult on, giving out tens, because if you look at the populations, a lot of times, 15 to 20% of the cards submitted are PSA 10s. And of course, you would imagine that these, when people submit cards, they think that they're worthy of a PSA 10. So you're getting like the best of the best submitted to PSA, and only 15 to 20% are coming back as 10s. So definitely a fact that, it's very difficult to get a 10. Whose fault of it, it is something you could debate over, but it is something that you have to be very careful with, because even though it's the junk wax era, it's not easy at all to submit a card and get a PSA 10.
Yeah, I think that's the reason you see the 10s so high for those junk wax era cards. It's tough. I mean, you look at the 89 Donruss Ken Griffey Jr., it's a hard card to grade. The centering, the chipping is,
yep.
I mean, it's tough to get a 10. The statistics, the population report goes to show that. It doesn't mean there's not thousands of 10s, but the percentage is pretty low. I would assume the percentage is probably about 15% or so. So it's tough, but I hope everyone's enjoyed this show. It's been a lengthy one, another hour-and-a-half episode. But I've gotten feedback that a lot of people actually do like the lengthy shows. You're not necessarily going to sit there and listen to it while you have 2 free minutes, but I have gotten some positive feedback from people who travel for work that they like to pop it in. They download it or stream it and listen to it through the car, and I appreciate people taking the time to listen to it. Let us know your thoughts. Let me know if you want Joe to come back on the show at some point. We'll see if he's ready and willing to come back and chat more about baseball cards. I know 2019 has been and will be a big year for you, Joe. I know you added a significant card to the collection, and you're looking to add some more cards at some point, but you might have to wait till Chicago for that. Is that something that's happening?
Oh, hell yeah! I that's my goal. Now that I own the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle, my next goal is to just save up for the National in Chicago and buy something pretty awesome. So that's the between now and then, it's all about saving up.
So there's little projects you can do too. You can do your vintage lot project and just kind of have that one thing to occupy you for a couple months. So it's a lot of fun, and that's one of the things about this hobby. And I repeat this all the time. I just say there's a lot of layers to it. You enjoy the sport. You enjoy the memories of watching the sport, following the sport, and then the cards. There's reasons to collect, whether it's to try and prospect a little bit and watch value, to buy low, sell high if that's what you do. If it's just to add to the collection, build to the collection. There's so many things you can do. Grade cards, toss things in binders. There's always something fun to do. So whether you have a lot to spend or a little to spend, you can have a tremendous amount of fun and a really good time in this hobby. So, Joe, I appreciate you jumping on the show. If you have any final thoughts, feel free to let everyone know right now.
No, this was a lot of fun. I'm definitely down for doing this again. Maybe we could do another one at the National or something like that.
That was something that I thought about doing last year. I was like, dude, I should do a live one at the National. It'd be freaking awesome. But then I quickly realized, I was like, oh man, there's so much going on that's not going to happen. But it's something to certainly consider. That would be a lot of fun. And that's something that we definitely do for the people that follow the YouTube channels. You will certainly see live videos. You will see recorded videos that get published later. There's a lot of video making and collaboration going on, and that to me is one of the most entertaining and fun parts of the National. Checking out the cards is obviously awesome. That's why we all go there. But I know from my perspective, being in the Philadelphia area, I'm able to get to a few card shows that are significant card shows. They're not quite the National, but they're pretty big during the course of the year. And Joe, being from the New York area, there's some smaller shows, but there's also some bigger shows that you're able to attend during the year. So we have those opportunities to go to card shows. And in the year 2019, you have so many online areas to buy cards like eBay and stuff. The cards are great at the National, and there's amazing stuff to see, and it's definitely a great place to pick up some awesome stuff. But to me, the number one thing is going out there and meeting up with people that you've interacted with over the years and talked to, and hanging out is just, it's a great time, and talking about cards and everything else is it's awesome. So I look forward to you being able to partake in that experience a little bit. Right,
and hopefully my flight makes it this year. So
let's hope so. Let's hope you make it and everything goes smoothly, and you're not recording videos on boats, all excited, and then next thing you know, being just an utter disappointment.
I got my fingers crossed.
All right, man. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate everyone out there being involved in the show, posting your thoughts. Joe, thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to everyone next time. Have a great one.
Thanks, guys.